Why are there so many shows starring Muppets and dozens of movies too? They said they'd watch everyone and they mean it. It's something that they've got to do. So now they've pledged you a lifelong commitment. The Muppets, Matthew and Sam.
Welcome to Commitment, the podcast where two friends have vowed to watch all things Muppets. I'm Matthew Gatos.
And I'm Sam Schultz.
And this week we watched the Muppets appearance on the Julie Andrews Hour, performance on the special Keep U.S. Beautiful.
Did you watch the special at all? That one?
The U.S. Beautiful special?
Yeah.
No, I just watched the clip.
The announcer says, keep us beautiful.
This makes more sense, because I was going to say, Keep U.S. Beautiful is a terrible name for a show. So the fact that it's like a play on words of us makes a lot more sense.
I watched some of this, and it's wild for reasons that I will explain later.
All right. Well, yeah, we watched a clip from Keep Us, wink, beautiful, and a very short clip of Kermit and Cookie Monster presenting an award at the Emmys. And this will cover all of the first half of 1973. And our Muppet of the Week this week will be Sam's favorite, Thog.
Boo, boo, hiss. I hate him even more after this week.
Yeah, I think in a previous episode you said, like, oh, thank God we're good and done with talking Thog. He'll just disappear into the background from now on. And I think you're very wrong.
I was not expecting him to come out. Yeah, this is like 3 years after Santa Claus Switch. Why?
And I think we get even more talking Thog after this.
Oh, God.
So prepare yourself. But first, I did want to acknowledge the fact that we have a number of new listeners who have maybe found the podcast recently thanks to Twitter or somewhere else. So there seems to be more of you finding us lately. So, hey, thanks for checking us out. This is a podcast where we're going through chronologically and watching every single thing Muppets that we can get our hands on from the Sam and Friends days up till where we're at now in 1973 and beyond. And I wanted to do a sort of a refresh/check-in with you, Sam, because we haven't really talked about this podcast as a podcast since the beginning. And I wanted to check in because I was going to ask you, is this what you expected?
You mean, is this like what I expected it to feel like to watch all of this? Or like,
yeah, like I guess, did you expect me to dig up literally everything?
Oh, like specifically this podcast?
Yes.
Oh,
like when we started talking about it, it was like, okay, let's watch all the movies, let's watch all the TV shows. And then I was like, cool, I'm going to pull this clip from a garbage special that they did in 1973, and you have to watch that now too.
I am not super surprised by it, knowing you as a human being, that you would doggedly go through and like dig up every single thing you could find. I'm much more surprised that this is what the Muppets were doing in the early 70s. From like an outside observer, if I didn't know the Muppet Show was coming, I would say like, Jim better start looking for like a different job or something.
Yeah, the Muppets have had their day.
Yeah, it seems like a big downswing, and like nobody even mentions the Jimmy Dean Show anymore, which was like his, I would say like his crowning achievement so far probably was being on the Jimmy Dean Show for years. Mm-hmm. But like Julie Andrews in this special doesn't even know that the Muppets existed before Sesame Street.
Yeah.
So like I keep forgetting that Sesame Street is a huge deal.
Yeah, that is the sort of like the constant thing that we have to keep, like I have to keep reminding myself when I'm watching things is just like, oh, right, yes, no, Sesame Street's very popular. Yeah. Everyone loves it. It's still going very strong. Jim Henson has a lot of work to do. It just is not in this side of the Muppet world. Yeah.
I guess my biggest surprise is that he got famous because of Sesame Street, which is not something I knew. I thought that a lot of stuff happened before Sesame Street, and that Sesame Street and the Muppet Show were more simultaneous than they have ended up being. But no, I'm not surprised that you have gone above and beyond to find a billion extra things to I mean, like, you're the read every Star Wars book guy, and you're you. And that's great. And I do really enjoy it, and I like getting this look back at like what the world was like and what television was like, and what it's like kind of heartening in a way also to see somebody who's like not failing, but failing kind of to do the thing he wants to do, I feel like. With Sesame Street, like, he doesn't want to be a children's entertainer, and he's trying so hard not to do that. But the projects he's picking are so weird and just, like, don't seem like they're turning out right.
Yeah, and he's trying to do other things at this time and trying to get some stuff going. And obviously we'll have some pilots coming up soon that lead to stuff. But yeah, this era, this like 71, 72, 73 kind of era is some very odd choices.
And knowing that they will be a Disney-owned property, one of the most famous media properties of all time that will probably never be forgotten. You wouldn't guess that based on what we're seeing now.
Especially like Kermit specifically at this time is still not like Kermit. Oh my God. Like, yes, he's presenting at the Emmys with Cookie Monster. That's a big deal. But like having like a Julie Andrews special and not having Kermit on it.
No.
Like, that's not something you would do nowadays. If you were having a Muppets on something special and Kermit wasn't there, people would be very confused.
And Kermit's like second fiddle to Cookie Monster in that Emmy appearance. Cookie Monster is the star.
Yeah, it's more so like, okay, they wanted Jim and Frank to present at the Emmys with puppets. Who are they going to have them do? All right, let's have them pick their most famous characters that they can perform kind of on their own. Yeah,
I guess it's also useful that Kermit is like the only Sesame Street Muppet who speaks in like complete sentences and has a functioning brain.
They need an adult there to handle that situation. Well, yeah, I just wanted to check in to make sure that, you know, the podcast was living up to your expectations as well as the audience's. But
I think there's a lot of stuff in the future that I'm really excited about too, like playing the video games. I'm freaking pumped to play the video games and like maybe live stream some of that and then talk about it on the show. But like once things get weirder and more Muppet showy, I think there will be a lot more like goofy stuff that we can do and will do. And I think the show, like in a few years, I think the show will be unrecognizably strange compared to what it is like now.
Yeah, and even just like a few episodes from now, we're going to be full on, like full steam ahead into Muppets being very popular nationwide, worldwide. So we've got a few light episodes here. I say a few. We've got a light episode this week, a lighter episode next week, and then the week after that's just like everything they did in 1974. So it'll be a weird few weeks, but then we've got some definitely some big Muppet projects coming up. But for now, let's talk about what we're talking about this week, Sam. And what did we watch?
In 1973, Julie Andrews was a big star. Even like 10 years after Mary Poppins, she was still like top tier movie star is what it seems like. So she was sort of just like being in lots of movies and doing normal famous person stuff, which, as we've mentioned many times before in the 70s, meant that she had a variety show. So her variety show was called the Julie Andrews Hour, and it consisted almost entirely of Julie and a handful of guests singing and dancing, like elaborate dance numbers on elaborate sets with lots of backup dancers. And it was produced and distributed by Lord Lou Grade's company. So I looked into him a little bit because we've talked about him a lot, but we've never really like talked about it.
Yeah, we've just alluded to him being very important.
Yeah, so as best as I could tell, just from skimming his Wikipedia page, Lord Lou was like a Ted Turner type in the UK. He owned a lot of television stations and a lot, production companies and stuff. And in the 60s and 70s, he kind of had his sights set on American television as being like the next thing for him to take over. So with his production company, ITC Entertainment, he was developing shows for the U.S. market, and that included stuff like the Julie Andrews Hour, because even though she's British, she was a huge star in the U.S., and like really associated with Disney, so people were like really into her. The marionette action show, I don't know if you've seen this before, Thunderbirds. Are you familiar with that?
I am familiar with Thunderbirds.
That's such an old reference that I'm sure like most people won't. It's like what Team America World Police is making fun of, but even that
even
is like
Team America, is an
Yeah.
old reference at this point where it's like Gen Zers haven't seen Team America.
Back in the 60s, for some reason, there was a lot of marionette action shows, all done by the same company. It's called Super Marionation, and just they wanted to get marionettes going. But anyway, this ITC Entertainment would also go on to produce a Muppet Show in a few years. But anyway, it made the Julie Andrews Hour, which was very well received by critics, but people did not watch it, even after it got nominated for 10 Emmys, of which it won 7, so it was canceled after just 1 season. In this episode in particular, Julie is joined by Broadway and television star Sandy Duncan, Italian singer, that's the only way I can describe him, I don't know anything else about him, Sergio Franchi, who sings the theme to the recently released super blockbuster, The Godfather, because this is a year after The Godfather, so everybody probably had Italian guy fever, and Jim Henson and the Muppets. So at the top of the show, during the introductions, Rolf pops up to represent the Muppets and also to say some very derogatory things about Italians and Italian Americans, like that they're lecherous drunks, for instance, just like, 70s stuff. He even busts on Perry Como, who they've just hung out with like months before this, so kind of rude.
Yeah, I tried to look into that because he specifically references like Perry Como falling asleep.
Yeah.
And that like triggered something in my brain where I remembered there was a slight reference to him being sleepy in the Perry Como winter show. And so I was like, okay, there was some like running gag that Perry Como fell asleep somewhere or was a sleepy man or something. And I didn't spend a lot of time looking this up, but I couldn't find anything with like a first Google search of like Perry Como sleepy. As if I'm his nanny. Is Perry Como sleepy? But yeah, no, I don't know what that was about, but it seemed to be one of those things that you just, like he mentioned, like Dean Martin will get drunk on you, Perry Como will fall asleep on you, and it's like, okay, yeah, I knew that like Dean Martin's whole thing was that he was a drunk lounge singer. That was his character. But I did not know Perry Como's thing was he's sleepy. And maybe it was like his performance style that he was like a little bit more low key or something, but no clue.
That's what I see most of the references to in my Google search, which is Perry Como falls asleep, is that his singing style was very relaxed. But that doesn't seem right. There must have been something that happened where I hope he fell asleep on live television. That would be great.
That's what I wanted it to be. Is like everyone was always calling back to this time that Perry Como like fell asleep on the Tonight Show or something.
Yeah, that would be really cute. So anyway, after Rolf is rude to this Italian singer guy, they jump right into a Muppet skit of a lady arranging flowers, but a monster sneaking around behind her and eating all the flowers as she's putting them into the vase. Eventually she catches on and starts smoking a cigarette with him, but his cigarette is a stick of dynamite and he explodes. Then the Italian guy sings the Godfather theme. Sandy Duncan and Julie Andrews do a very weird burlesque act, and then Julie interviews her guests, including Jim. There's a few interesting tidbits here, like Julie Andrews, like I said before, thought the Muppets originated on Sesame Street, which makes me think that most people probably just assume that was the case, because why wouldn't they, I suppose. And then we also get what I think is probably the answer to the very difficult thing to do with live hand Muppets that Frank Oz was talking about at the Dick Cavett show. Jim talks about how hard it is to clap hands with another person who's not you.
Yeah, they reference the two things, which is like, again, I think these could be, either one of these could be the two answers to that mystery, which is either clapping with somebody else, or it seems like he mentioned to Julie Andrews that drawing a square is difficult. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that must come up on Sesame Street, because why would you like draw a square in the air? But they reference that those are the two things that are difficult, are clapping and drawing a square.
That interview is cut short by Jim saying, oh, there's a big guy here to meet you. And then Julie Andrews goes out and starts talking to Thog. His big blue ass comes out on stage. And he sings a really whiny song, asking Julie Andrews if she'd dance with him. And it's like, oh, don't say no if I ask you to dance with me. Then they dance with each other. After that, Julie and Sergio sing some opera together. Then Rolf comes out for kind of like a Jimmy Dean throwback host segment where he and Julie have a little chat about him being her best friend. And then they sing a little song together, which is cute. It's sweet. Then something really crazy happens. There's like a 25-minute long segment celebrating composer Jerome Kern, who, to be fair to him, wrote a lot of extremely famous songs like Old Man River and Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and The Way You Look Tonight. So he was like, great. And I get the impression that a lot of these, if not all of these episodes, included a 25-minute tribute to a composer like this.
Wow.
But it's extremely long. I didn't look into that any, but that seems to be the case.
If you're trying to make a variety show, you got to have variety.
Yeah.
For the last like third of your show to be nothing but a medley of songs by the same man is not variety.
And to be fair to this, it looks great.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
very, like, the production is, it looks like an extremely expensive show, the whole thing. And the singing is great and it's all fine, but it's actually 25 minutes long. It's the whole last part of the show. And there's not any Muppets in it, which I thought was the weirdest part.
Yeah, I was like waiting for that moment of like even Thog coming out and like mixing in with them or something like that, and we don't get that. It's very, very weird.
Yeah. I mean, probably the show comes together really fast, so they didn't have like maybe a lot of time for Jim to do something super fun. Because it seems like they kind of bust out, like the Lady in the Flowers thing seems like something they'd done before maybe, or like something not necessarily made for this show.
Yeah.
But yeah, come on, have Rolf pop up and sing one of the songs or something. So you don't see a Muppet for 25 minutes until the very end when Thog comes out and just wordlessly stands with Julie while she kind of like sings her sign-off song.
He's got a fancy jacket now, though.
He does have a nice vaudeville jacket.
Yeah, like red and white striped. Just, I'm sure, was like all of the fabric at the store. We need to dress this giant thing.
Yeah. Bought a big picnic blanket and put it on Thog.
Yeah.
And that's that for that show. But Julie will continue to work with the Muppets throughout the 70s, as we will continue to talk about. She'll be on the Muppet Show and other specials with them.
We've got 4 more Julie Andrews specials to watch.
Yeah, and it seems like she, like, we'll talk about it. It's weird that they're in this. It seems like she genuinely loves the Muppets. So that's,
Oh, yeah, the way she introduces them before their first segment is just like very... I don't know. She seems to very, very much enjoy it. She says, like, the marvelous Muppet creatures Jim Henson created and all this stuff. So it's like, yeah, she seems to have a lot of reverence for the Muppets and Jim Henson.
So we also watched a very small part of a 1973 TV special called Keep Us Beautiful. The us in that is stylized to look like the U.S. flag. So it's like, keep the U.S. beautiful. And it's a... kind of an anti-pollution, anti-littering special, which I watched the intro to it and thought, oh, this is interesting. This is a cute little thing. And then it's like, Keep Us Beautiful, brought to you by the American Gas Association. Clean energy for today and tomorrow. And halfway through it, there's like a 5-minute ad for new gas ranges and how you should replace your gas oven with a new gas oven because it's less pollution.
Baby steps, Sam, baby steps.
It's also hosted by Raymond Burr, who has had experience with Muppets before. He spends a lot of the end of it talking about how we owe it to God not to pollute the earth he gave to us, which is quite interesting.
Thanks, Ironsides.
Yeah. So then the Muppet part of this is a song by some really cool garbage creatures. They're just like living in a dump, and some of them are made out of old boots and teapots. They're just monsters made out of different recognizable pieces of garbage. And they dance around the dump singing a song about how they're going to cover the world in trash to stick it to human beings for messing up the earth. And it's really good. I like that one.
I like that they're like excited by pollution. They're happy that humans are polluting this earth because it's like, this is amazing. There's going to be more of us. We're going to cover the humans. We're living our best life. And like clearly that tongue-in-cheek thing that I hope everyone was able to appreciate at the time.
Right.
That this wasn't like a pro-pollution thing.
Yeah. Oh, pollution, not so bad. These guys are cute. Imagine if they were everywhere.
I was actually, like, when watching that, I was like, okay, that's Jim Henson's voice. Okay, that's Frank Oz's voice. That's Jerry Nelson's voice. Who's this 4th person? Because I was like, I don't recognize that. And like, we only have 3 of these dudes normally who do every other voice. So I looked that up, and it's John Lovelady, who was apparently one of the Muppet performers who was brought on during the Great Santa Claus switch when they were like, shit, we need more people for this job.
Oh, yeah.
And his biggest roles that he would go on to do would be on The Muppet Show, playing the roles of Crazy Harry, the guy who blows things up. And the announcer of Veterinarians Hospital.
Then the last thing we watched in 1973, because this is all 1973, obviously, Kermit and Cookie Monster presented the Emmy Award for Outstanding Children's Programming to 2 different shows, which I guess
they used to have a lot more ties, I think, back in the old days of the Emmys.
The teaser for the next clip played on YouTube also had a double winner, so it must have happened a lot. So the winners were The Last of the Curlews by Hanna-Barbera, which is a cartoon about a real bird species that is thought to be extinct. And it was like a nature documentary, but a cartoon for some reason. And also A Picture of Us by the creator of Lamb Chop, Sherry Lewis. And I couldn't find a lot of info about a picture of us, but Sherry Lewis is really cool. She's a puppeteer who had been doing her thing for like longer than Jim and company had been doing their thing, I think. She was brought in to replace the Howdy Doody show when it went off the air in the 60s. But even before that, she had been like a vaudeville puppet person with Lamb Chop. They kind of had like a two-man show. So she was like a stand-up comedian. She did children's television for decades and decades. She wrote an episode of the original Star Trek, which is really cool. So she was like really badass. And then she basically at her speech for the Emmys says "fuck cartoons" in front of Joseph Barbera, who is the man responsible for like every television cartoon that's existed up until this point, like Scooby-Doo and Yogi Bear and the Flintstones and the Jetsons.
I went and like I watched that back because I was like, did she just basically say "fuck cartoons"? That like, thank God puppet shows are winning because cartoons suck is essentially what she's saying. And I'm like, wow, Sherry going for his throat there.
Yeah, she basically says like, we've lost so many children to cartoons.
Like it's a plague, like upon children that like. Yeah, it's very interesting because I think Sherry Lewis is one of those people who is very interesting because she sort of has a very like similar trajectory to Jim Henson, but just on a much less famous scale.
This also made me remember that I think I watched a lot more Lamb Chop than I ever did Sesame Street. I think my grandma was big into Lamb Chop, and I just remember it being on TV a lot.
Did you annoy the shit out of your parents with singing the song that never ends?
Yes. Yeah, I think I did. I think I have a distinct memory of them telling me to stop singing it.
Yeah, and they're like, haha, that's the joke. I'm not going to stop.
But I was, I think, a big Lamb Chop fan, and I think she's super cool. I think she's every bit the puppeteer that Jim Henson is and like the performer that Jim Henson is. I think she'd be interesting. Maybe we could do like a special Sherry Lewis episode someday or something. Watch some old episodes of Lamb Chop.
Yeah. Because
her puppets were just uglier. I think that was maybe one of the
that's true. They looked
of...
more handmade and less like real and alive than a lot of the Muppets. So there might be something to that. Like she didn't have a Don Celine. But yeah, I think that would be really interesting because I have not watched any Lamb Chop in a long time. I think I also have a Lamb Chop puppet somewhere. Like, I think I have one around here somewhere that I bought like 20 years ago that I just still have. I was also very much a Lamb Chop kid growing up. It was that era of like watching PBS when they had like Arthur and Lamb Chop and Barney and all those things. And it was just, definitely did not realize that she was as famous for so long before that because like we're obviously watching her in the early 90s. And like that's towards the tail end of her career. Yeah,
that was like the 5th iteration of her show or something at that point was the PBS show.
There were some other Muppet things happening in early 1973, some which we couldn't watch because I couldn't track them down, and other things that were happening just, in their actual lives. One of the big things is that in February 1973, Jim Henson meets with Michael Eisner to discuss some pilots and TV specials because at this time, Michael Eisner is working at ABC. I think he's a pretty high-level producer at ABC. But that will eventually lead to the Muppet Valentine show, which we'll be talking about in a couple episodes. But in the future, Michael Eisner will be very important because he will be the CEO of Disney who wants to acquire the Muppets in the late 80s, early 90s, around the time of Jim Henson's death. So he becomes a very, very important player in the Muppet story later on.
Kind of the maligned CEO of Disney, I feel like. I remember seeing Michael Eisner all the freaking time.
Yes.
He was on TV a lot.
No, he definitely made himself seen. I think he's in the Muppets Go to Walt Disney World special.
Yeah, he and animated Mickey are hanging out. I remember that very clearly.
Like I said, we'll talk more about Michael Eisner through the years because he will become very important. Another person who will become very important that Jim also was meeting with in February 1973. This was not the first time they met, but this was one of the first times they met in a professional, let's actually talk about this for real kind of thing, was Dave Goelz, who goes on to play Gonzo. And in February 1973, Jim met and had dinner with him and was asking him, hey, do you want to come on and be like a puppeteer and designer on this Broadway show I'm working on? Because at this time, Jim is still pushing that Broadway show, still really trying to make it happen. Something that he'll pretty much try to make happen all the way up until the Muppet Show happens. But Jim offers that to Dave Goelz. But obviously, we know that doesn't really end up going anywhere other than Dave Goelz coming on to play Gonzo. Speaking of the Broadway show, on the same day that the Julie Andrews Hour aired, in the Jim's Red Book, his journal, Jim also noted that this was the same day that Gelbart got out of the Broadway show. So we mentioned Larry Gelbart before. He's the guy who was supposed to write the Broadway show and then left to go work on MASH and became very successful on MASH. So this was one of those early signs that this plan was not going the way Jim was hoping it was going to go early on. And then in April 1973 is when they get the go-ahead from Michael Eisner to do the Valentine show. So they'll start working on that in the summer of 1973. But this is also, they did another Dick Cavett show appearance in April 1973 that I unfortunately could not track down. This one does not seem to be as, they're not there for the whole show, I don't think. They are there to have the country trio from the Perry Como special. They perform a song, and then also I think Jim and Kermit do another little interview segment. And then in June 1973, we have, that's when Dave Goelz officially signs with Muppets, Inc. to work with them. And we also had an appearance from Carol Spinney that I cannot find on a show called Summer Place on June 28th, 1973. And that was apparently just a local TV show in Michigan that he appeared on. So it makes sense that I can't track it down. But yeah, that's some other things the Muppets were doing in early 1973.
Just kind of kicking around.
Yeah, just kind of kicking around, popping over to their friend Dick's show, see how he's doing. One thing I also wanted to note, too, about the Keep Us Beautiful special, which I don't know, how you felt about it, but it was all right. It was apparently produced by Flip Wilson's production company, which is, how they got the gig.
I don't know. I really liked the Keep Us Beautiful skit. It felt like the most high-effort thing they've done in a long time, I guess.
Yeah, it felt very Muppet Show-y, in its production value. I think it went a little off the rails. I don't know if it was a live performance type thing, but there's times when they're kind of out of sync with the music and feel like some people are kind of missing their cue a little bit. But it didn't really ruin it too much. It almost made it a little bit more charming, but it seemed a little bit rougher. And maybe if it had been something Jim was directing for the Muppet Show, he might have had them do another take or two.
Yeah, it felt like one of their old TV appearances in the 60s, the reindeer song. It's basically the reindeer song, but with trash people.
Yeah. And then, the Emmy Awards appearance. We get a very, very brief look into the Muppets here, but Cookie Monster eats the envelope because he cannot read and gets frustrated by that, and then Kermit has to look down into his throat to read out the answers.
He doesn't even seem like he gets frustrated by it. He's kind of just well, my only other thing I do is eat stuff, so I guess I will eat this piece of paper. When his brain meets a problem he cannot solve,
he eats it.
Eat. Yeah. But yeah, it was a nice little skit. I would have really liked to see them talk to Sherry Lewis, which I guess is not what you do on a award show like this. But
I did like that Cookie Monster was sort of the interviewer a little bit. He didn't talk to them, but he held the microphone for the people accepting the awards of here you go.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. So getting into our main feature this week, our feature presentation, the Julie Andrews Hour, which again we said aired on February 17th, 1973. It's kind of weird. You texted me when you started watching it, and then you were 40 seconds in, and you're this is already strange.
It was weird because just of how straightforward it was, I think. It was just Julie Andrews singing for an hour straight. It's just it seems like it's for such a narrow band of people. No wonder people didn't watch it. Having the Muppets in it is maybe the most bizarre choice of all, especially the Muppets not singing, except for that one song.
Yeah, because I think you have the Sergio, who is a very obviously earnest, Italian singer, who is just there because he sings opera and is good at his job. But, he's very dull as a human and as a performer. There's nothing really, fun about him, whereas, you have Sandy Duncan, who's clearly there. She seems fun. And the comic relief role in this. I could not, gun to my head, have told you who Sandy Duncan was, but I know I have heard that name 1,000 times on The Simpsons or other things where they just say, Sandy Duncan. And I'm ha 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 ha, good joke.
I felt the same way, and I looked her up and I still, didn't exactly know. I know who she is, but I don't think I've ever really seen anything with her in it.
Yeah.
I feel like she probably showed up on Disney Channel or something when I was a kid, or and she's on a Muppet Show episode. I think she guests on a Muppet Show.
And I think that's where
that's why I know
it was
her.
similar to like Joey Heatherton in the Perry Como special, where I was like, that's a name I've heard, but you don't
Yeah.
even really look familiar to me.
Sandy Duncan, Joey Heatherton, and Julie Andrews kind of all have the same haircut. When you're watching a blurry old tape of something, might as well all be the same lady.
Yeah, we put out that call in a previous episode that people should search their VHS collections for us and send us things. And this looks like somebody did that. This is one of the worst quality things we've watched so far. Thankfully, the majority of stuff seems to be intact. But whoever uploaded this to the internet, again, thanks to them, because we wouldn't be able to watch it without that. But there are some very, very rough VHS pause moments and tracking issues that we had to deal with.
Whoever taped it stopped during the commercials, which was annoying.
It was
Shouldn't
a
have
bummer
done
because there was
that.
little glimpses of weird commercials that we just didn't get to check out.
So somebody must have been really excited about this episode, and they were sitting next to their VCR, pausing it when the commercials would start, playing, resuming recording when they would end, because they knew that they would just want to watch this over and over again, I guess, for the rest of their life.
Starting off at the beginning, we do have where you mentioned it looking expensive, and I think that's very clear straight from the beginning, because
She's got a whole
Julie Andrews-
orchestra.
She's a whole orchestra, and she makes them appear out of nowhere with some visual trickery. She's singing "Strike Up the Band," and then she says one line. The entire orchestra just appears around her. But after that opening number is when we get the Sandy Duncan, Sergio, and Julie all talking together, and that's when Ralph interrupts with his so they can be offensive to Italians.
Yeah. Calm, drunk, and lazy.
It's so weird because they're having this genuine moment with Julie Andrews and the other two talking there, and then Ralph is like, "Hey Julie, come over here," and she joins him, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that Italian guy, right? Look out for him."
He's a creep, huh?
Yeah, it's he's right there, and then you're this is also a hornier Ralph than we're used to.
He does seem different. Yeah.
He seems very into Julie Andrews.
Mm-hmm.
The two times we see him in this special, he is flirting with Julie Andrews and being like, "We should get out of here. We should go do something," which was, again, a little bizarre and feels a little bit more of talk show Ralph that we see sometimes, as opposed to TV show Ralph.
It doesn't quite work. He's not on his top form for sure.
Well, I think it also doesn't work because you also have the same story with Thog. Thog and Rolf are both in love with Julie Andrews in this special. But those two storylines don't intersect. There's not anything where Ralph is trying to convince Julie that she should be with him instead of Thog. It just seems like both of them are crushing on her, and she's like, "Oh, you guys."
Yeah.
Which is okay, could we have given something different to one of them?
Rolf could have sang one of his songs from the Jimmy Dean show or something.
Mm-hmm.
He could have done a little bit of a throwback, but nobody seems to remember that existed. Also, I think Kermit gets away with being horny a little bit better than Rolf does.
I think you're right. I think this was actually a conversation maybe I had on Twitter with somebody where it was talking about the reason Kermit's flirtatiousness seems a little less weird is because usually people are flirting back with Kermit.
Yeah, people think Kermit's a hunk.
Yeah,
and people think
he's
Rolf's
usually-
kind of a dumpy weirdo.
Well, I think they just see him as a dog.
He's a dog.
Whereas
yeah,
they don't
that's
see
true.
Kermit as just a frog.
Uh-huh.
They see him as the handsome leading man.
So it's a little less weird because Rolf seems desperate every time he's flirting with someone. For sure.
It seems like he doesn't have any other friends either. It seems like he needs a friend and he's reaching out to you for help.
Yeah, he lost Jimmy. That was his friend.
Oh, you're
he doesn't
right.
got anybody anymore.
Oh,
Gosh, you're right.
it's Jimmy
Poor
Dean won't
Rolf.
return my calls.
Whoa, weird. He does, and he's kind of third wheelie in the Muppet Show, or in the Muppet movie too, where he's just kind of there, and he has a connection with Kermit, but when they get back to the Studebaker and Fozzie's there, Rolf's probably just oh well, he's already got his big furry best friend slot filled. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
I think that's why one of my favorite things is that in the ABC Muppets show is that he owns the bar that they hang out at, and in the background you can see multiple pictures of him and Jimmy Dean together, and it's just very, very sweet of oh, his old friend.
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't think Jimmy Dean was up to a ton of stuff at this point.
No, they should have just brought the show back. Poor Rolf. But anyway, yeah. So Rolf doesn't come out of this one so great, and frankly, his puppet looks a little worse for wear too, I think.
He did look, this, for lack of a better word, cheaper. He looked a little bit more construction papery, the texture of him. Maybe this is a new Rolf. I don't know if how many different Rolf styles there were, but like this one looked a little bit.
My guess was that it was the original Rolf, and that it's just so old. He's starting to not look so good, and then they'll build a new one for the Muppet Show.
Yeah, that was one thing that was interesting in reading the Jim Henson biography, is that for a long time they did not treat these puppets with any sort of like respect, for lack of a better word, of like they would basically like finish with a Muppet, retire it, move on to a new one, and they would just like give it to Jim's kids. I'm just like, here, you get to play with Kermit now, you get to play with Rolf now, he's yours.
What the heck?
And for a long time they would either like use a puppet until it essentially like fell apart and then give it to the kids. Like they wouldn't necessarily think too much about revamping the styles that often. It was mostly like when they needed to rebuild a new one, they would. And they tried to avoid it because they said that rebuilding puppets was one of the hardest things you could do because it would never look exactly the same, which I think is what, like, when we look at Bert, for instance, and we talked about how he's looked different through the years, that might not be because they were like, oh, okay, let's make Bert's head slightly rounder, or let's like move his eyebrows slightly up. It might have just been like, shit, we don't really know exactly how to replicate Bert one-to-one. So I think it's interesting how they treated the puppets at the time, because I think Jim Henson in an interview even talked about how they weren't able to do a lot of like these museum shows that travel around now because they were still using a lot of the puppets. Like a lot of the original puppets weren't like on display somewhere ready to be in a museum. They were still using them. And I think we see that with things like Featherstone and Gosh Posh, where it's like they just use these puppets until they fall apart. So yeah, maybe that was the case with Ralph. Maybe this was like one of the original Ralphs. I don't know how many Ralphs they had on hand, but it does seem like he's looking a little rough at this point. What do you think of the flower eating Muppet segment, the first segment they do?
It kind of reminded me of the painter sketch from Muppets Make Puppets or Muppets on Puppets or whatever it was called. It was all right. I think I'm just a sucker for like known Muppets, like the famous Muppets.
Yeah.
So when it's a skit with two nobodies, I'm just like, yawn. Let me see somebody famous. But it was good. Like it was. I think I forget a lot that the puppetry is so like great because it's easy to forget that because they look like they're alive. I liked at the end when the monster blew up and they like, while the smoke was billowing, they like pulled a cord and like all of his ears and stuff fell off and he was just like a burned out husk left over. I thought that was really cool.
And then the woman starts sticking flowers like into his skull.
Yeah.
Like using him as a vase.
But it was fine. It was it was really out of place in retrospect. Like,
but this crowd loved it.
They did love it.
They were freaking out. Like every little thing got the biggest laugh.
Yeah, and I did make a note that they were reacting to it like people used to react to, like accustomed and
right. Like when he was on like the Steve Allen Tonight Show, and people were like,
"Yeah,
that frog is talking."
Yeah. So yeah, they had a very positive, enthusiastic audience. They were probably excited to see Julie Andrews, so they probably just were feeling great.
Did you know before this that the theme from Godfather had lyrics?
I didn't know that, and also did it before this? Did they write it for this show?
I feel like it's one of those things like the Star Trek theme song where it does have lyrics, but it doesn't.
It just had to have lyrics so somebody could get some certain credit for it, or they could copyright it in a certain way.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it maybe is that sort of thing, because I feel like it'd be very, very weird if he was just like, hey, I wrote some lyrics to the theme from The Godfather. Can I sing them on your show, Julie Andrews?
That's true. That would be pretty strange.
When they said, like, he's going to sing the theme from The Godfather, I was like, cool. Didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. Comes out and just is like, doo-dee-doo-dee-doo-doo-doo-doo.
Yeah.
But I think like stuff like that, the whole thing, if they had a Muppet element to every act, like that maybe would have been disrespectful to the people singing, I suppose. They could have thought that. But I think if they had Muppet creatures in the background or or a full body Muppet doing something.
Essentially doing what the Muppet Show eventually does,
Yeah.
which is like let someone sing or dance and do a very earnest performance. But in the background, you have like the mutation Muppets dancing around, or you have a Frackle jumping into the scene.
Yeah. The whole thing just felt to me like, why are the Muppets even here if they're going to ignore them so much?
Well, I think as a variety show, even, I think like the Perry Como one works better because there's a story built into it. And like you don't need to go as high concept as like an entire winter village and a ski lodge and all that stuff. But I think having a through line that runs throughout the special that you can keep checking back in on would help this special a lot. Whereas this just feels very much like we're going to sing a song now, and then we're going to sing another song, and then there's a Muppet, and then I'm going to interview Jim Henson, and then I'm going to do a sexy song. But there's no like through line of like, I feel like if you had Ralph come back like 3 or 4 times throughout it, and every time he's coming back, they're talking about the show itself, or he's checking back in with Julie to see how their friendship is growing. Those kinds of things I feel like could keep it grounded a little bit more and make the Muppets make more sense to be involved in this. But it just felt like it felt like they had a list of things that they sort of randomized of like, let's do these now, I guess.
And the Muppets were like, well, we have this flower lady skit sitting around that we haven't done anything with. I guess we can do that.
Yeah. So yeah, after that they did the Last Blues song, which is their body number, as they allude to. Julie Andrews is basically saying that like her and Sandy Duncan don't get to play sexy ladies. They always play like the good girl in things. And so this was their like fun, we're going to have a good weekend kind of song.
I think when they said we don't get to be sexy much was the first time I realized that was sexy was what they were trying to be.
Same.
In the previous act.
Yeah, I think that was, it did not come across as like, oh my God, they're doing something risque. I did like that the interview segment that immediately follows that. Sandy Duncan's talking about like just got married to a doctor like 3 weeks ago or something like that. And they're like talking specifically about like her personal life, which is like, again, showing that there wasn't really a through line or like a plan for how this was going to go. Because then it like transitions into like, cool, glad to hear about your husband. Hey, Jim, when did you invent the Muppets again? And it's just very, I don't even know if they asked Sergio any questions during the
I don't think
segment.
they do. What do you think of that medley? Do you hate all of it, or?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
I'm a fan of musicals, but not necessarily like old musicals. But yeah, it was one of those that I was like, every time they started a new song, I was like, oh, this is gonna keep going.
Yeah. That's what I was like. At first, I was like, "This is fine," and then I was like, "This sucks." But then I was like, "They're still doing this. This is still about that guy."
Yeah, when they started talking, I didn't realize like what was happening, and they were just like, "We'd like to do a tribute to our music man this week, Jerome Kern, who was born in 18 something and died in 1945." And I'm like, "Wait, we're doing a tribute to this man like 30 years after his death. Why are we doing this?" And then it just went on for so long that I put in my notes, maybe this matters to people back then.
Who is it for is exactly what I was thinking the whole time. Nobody cares about this except because there's not the internet. So you're not going to really know who Jerome Kern. It's not like you can look it up on your phone while they're doing it and be like, oh yeah, he wrote that. You'd have to be like the biggest musical theater nerd in the entire universe in 1973 to know what this was.
I feel like though, like a lot of the standards, like the popular songs back then were a lot of these like hits from musicals, because I think there's a lot of them that you don't even realize were from a musical. Right. That you like look up, you're like, oh yeah, I've always heard that song on TV shows or my mom sang it, but I didn't realize there was an entire show based around that one song. Yeah. For a show about Muppets, we had to watch a lot of non-Muppet Julie Andrews material. I do think it was interesting to see Thog was a bit more agile this time. Yeah. He was a much better dancer than he was in the Dick Cavett show. And he seemed to have some more eye movement than he did on Dick Cavett. He seemed much more expressive.
I wonder if some of his movement being better, I wonder if that was helped by the fact that they were on a show that was all about like Broadway singing and dancing. Maybe they had people on in the crew who were like like, for one thing, his mark wasn't right next to a staircase. He could have fallen down and died. So
Yeah.
that probably was really helpful. They probably knew, like, they told him, you have this many steps this way and this many steps this way, and you can just go wild. So he probably got to go more wild in that respect. Like, he got to be on an actual stage with professional dancers and stuff who were helping him.
Yeah, Julie Andrews was actually like directing him into places as opposed to Dick Cavett just being like, here, stand next to these stairs and maybe try not to fall.
Yeah.
But yeah, Julie Andrews like seems to really enjoy like the idea of Thog and dancing with him. Like there's multiple times she'll like grab his arm and like put it around her and all this stuff. And he even gets his own thank you at the end of the show. She like thanks like Jim Henson and the Muppets, Sandy Duncan, Sergio, and Thog.
Especially Thog. Of course, Thog. When if it was me and that was my variety show and the Muppet guys were like, we think this one's gonna be Thog heavy, I'd say, well, we're gonna rethink that. I'm not gonna dance with Thog. Sorry. It's kind of interesting they didn't have Sweetums come out. I wonder why. I wonder that's a better like that's a more impressive puppet, I think, Sweetums.
I think at the time, many people have a very different viewpoint than you do on Thog. They see this large blue thing that's very sweet, and they go, yes, give me more Thog.
Oh, God. Can we start talking about him as our Muppet of the Week?
We can.
I have some thoughts on him.
Cue the banjo music. Thog is the full-bodied Muppet. He's big, blue, semi-dog-like kind of thing.
I guess so.
He was 9.5 feet tall originally, being one of the tallest Muppets ever.
What do you mean originally?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
His main performer was Jerry Nelson for most of Thog's existence. Like many puppets of the era, he was designed by Jim Henson and built by Don Saleen, and his first appearance was in The Great Santa Claus Switch along with Fig, who we'll never see again.
His brother, his own damn brother. What happened to him?
But in that, he was considered to be a large frackle. I think on the Dick Cavett show, Jim Henson calls him a big frackle. But that's kind of the only time they ever connect him to that species. I think other times he's just a Thog. He's just an abstract Muppet. He will go on to appear in the Muppet Show, specifically like in the opening number. He is one of the big guys walking under the arches. And he will appear at least once in every season of the Muppets outside of the opening. One of the things I thought that was really interesting was like looking into Thog, seeing that we've sort of speculated about his popularity and how people liked him. But in 1978, they came out with some official Muppet Christmas ornaments. And Thog got one. And so I'm sending you this link, Sam, so you can see this.
Okay, I'm searching it.
But there's a page about Muppet Christmas ornaments on Muppet Wiki, and they're all kind of weird looking because they're like paper mache. So they're kind of
These are official things.
Yep.
These are not fan made Christmas ornaments.
These are official.
These look like shit.
They all look a little rough, but like you have Kermit, Miss Piggy, Fozzie, Rolf, and Animal, and then Thog. And this is like a couple years into the Muppet Show. So the fact that Gonzo isn't that other one is very weird to me. So it shows, again, that Thog was...
horrifying.
Yes, they are very horrifying. And I don't think that I don't know. I'm sure at the time it was like, oh, hey, look, you can get a Kermit ornament. But if I got that on Christmas morning, I'd be very disturbed because they have
These look like if the Blair Witch was decorating for Christmas.
These are things that like sometimes you go on Etsy and you type in Muppets or something like that, and you scroll down to like the cheapest section or something like that. You might see these there and go, oh, you tried.
Bless your heart.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see someone thinking that's Rolf. But it doesn't really look like Rolf. So yeah, I thought it was interesting that Thog got a Christmas ornament. As like this first line of Muppet ornaments, Thog was included. And he didn't get any more. Like they produced more Christmas ornaments throughout the years, and he didn't get another one. And he actually didn't get another official toy until 2003. But Thog will appear, again, like I said, across all the seasons of The Muppet Show. And then he goes on to appear in the end scene of the Rainbow Connection scene at the end of the Muppet movie, as every single Muppet that ever existed did at that point. Yeah. But then he wouldn't be seen again until 2011. He is in the background of the Muppets movie, the Jason Segel one.
The Muppets movie is from 2011?
Yeah, it's a 10-year-old movie, bud.
What the hell? I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
Okay, continue. Sorry.
But in that, he is just sort of in the background in a meeting scene. And then when they go to the Muppet Theater to put on the show again and rehearse, there's something noticeably different about Thog at this point. And he has trouble fitting through the archway. He hits his head. And it's sort of chalked up to like, oh, they're out of practice. He didn't duck, whatever. But it also turns out that Thog, when he was rebuilt for this movie, was made 2 feet taller.
So he's 11 feet tall?
He's at least 11 feet, if not like 11 and a half feet tall. And this is apparently, this is what I read, it doesn't seem like it could possibly be true, but the designer didn't have enough reference material for Thog. And so sort of just like winged it on Thog's height and ended up building him 11 feet tall.
But that doesn't make any sense.
And I agree. I think
you could see how tall Sweetums was in the Muppet Show intro and like compare him there.
Well, I think even if you like just look at the Muppet arches and like see that he walks under them comfortably in the old Muppet Show, but now he's bonking his head, something is off with your measurements.
Holy shit, he's huge. I'm looking at a picture of him. He's alarmingly giant. Yeah,
and like he obviously was big before when he would stand over Dick Cavett or Julie Andrews or anything, but like now he's like twice their height. But yeah, Thog doesn't speak at all in those roles. He is also in the background of Muppets Most Wanted as well. But again, he does not speak. He's just a background.
Is it the same 11-foot tall one?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
I would hope they wouldn't bother rebuilding a whole other Thog just for like one background scene. But at least in the 2011 Muppets, I don't know about Muppets Most Wanted, he was played by Tyler Bunch. And Tyler Bunch's most famous role right now is that he's Elmo's dad on Sesame Street.
Oh, okay.
That sort of Southern gentleman Elmo dad voice. But yeah, that's kind of actually all there is about Thog. Obviously, he is sort of just always the same sort of character. He comes out, he's sweet, he wants to dance, he's shy, and Sam hates him.
What I think, and this kind of gave me a little clarity, this thing that we watched this week, I think he feels like he's pretending to be that way to me.
Oh.
Like, he's being so coy, and he's asking her to dance, and he hopes she doesn't say no. And it just feels like he's kind of feeling sorry for himself and also kind of playing up and, like, he's got, like, a pretend baby voice, and if you caught Thug, like, at home, he'd be like, hey
guys,
give me a beer. Yeah. And then when he gets on stage, he's like, oh, I'm a little baby, please dance with me. And I think it's because it seems like he's begging her to dance with him, and it comes across as so like pathetic that it makes him feel like he's being a creep. And then she's like doing him a favor and dancing with him, and he's like, ha ha ha, I get to touch Julie's hips now. Just seems like a bad guy to me. And then Muppet, and actually in Great Santa Claus Switch, I liked him just fine.
Okay.
Because he's got a brother, and they're both dumb together, and he seems legitimately like a big dummy. And whatever that guy, Art Carney's character's name is rude to him. Kind of like a fun dynamic. And then Santa enchants him with his love and magic, and that's fine. I think they should have left Thog there though, as they did many other Frackles. He was probably too expensive, and they had to be like, well, we got to get our money out of this big puppet.
Yeah, I think it's like they like a design, they like the money that goes into it, and they're like, we need to keep using this to make it worth the thousands of dollars we spent on labor to make this thing. I don't necessarily hold the same strong negative feelings towards Thog as you do. I do like the theory that he is not the same sweet guy we see, but that he's actually performing. So there's like an extra meta layer to Thog. It seems like most of your least favorite Muppets are Jerry Nelson characters.
Yeah. That just doesn't sound to me like a cute little guy voice. It sounds to me like a guy pretending to be a cute little guy. Which it is. That's what it is.
Right,
so that's
yeah.
fine. But I think the Count's great. And that's not him doing a cute little guy voice. I like his voice. I think he's got a really great dynamic voice. But I don't believe it for a second when he's doing that little guy voice.
Thog, for me, I think they're definitely overusing him at this time. I don't think he is as good as they're pushing him to be. Like, I don't think he is that dynamic. I think having Kermit or Rolf or any of those other guys that are around be the people interacting with Julie Andrews is better. I do understand that, like, if you're going to have a full body Muppet who's going to go out there and dance, that if you're looking at your roster of, okay, we can't necessarily have Big Bird all the time because he's busy with Sesame Street, and we don't have, like, the LaChoy Dragon still hanging around, but, like, we have Sweetums and Thog, essentially, at this point.
The LaChoy Dragon would have been great.
He just sets Julie Andrews on fire.
I give Thog 0 stars.
Ooh. Let's see. If I'm going out of my 60 scale, like 1 to 60 stars, I'm going to give Thog like a 38.
That's an F. No, that's an F plus. Right?
Yeah, that fits. I'll give that.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. So I don't know about you, but because it was a light week of Muppet watching, I had a lot of time to watch non-Muppet things this week. How about you, Sam?
You go first.
Well, this week I watched, I was feeling very nostalgic and wanted to throw back to some childhood Matt movies. So I pulled up Disney Plus and I was like, you know what? I haven't watched The Rocketeer in about 25 years. Let's see if that holds up.
Uh-huh.
And it frickin' does.
It frickin' does.
It's so good. It's one of those that, like, I think if you're watching it for the first time now, maybe you don't like it as much. But if you have the strong Rocketeer nostalgia that I have and you loved it as a kid, I think it definitely holds up, especially if you haven't watched it in so long, because, like, I don't remember beat for beat what happens in The Rocketeer. I remember the broad strokes. But watching it again, not only was I surprised that I was, like, still enjoying it the whole time, we're also doing our MCU rewatch right now. And we had literally just watched Captain America: The First Avenger before I watched The Rocketeer. And those two movies are directed by the same man, Joe Johnston, who is also, weirdly enough, the guy responsible for the design of Boba Fett. He's a interesting man. Yeah, he worked on Star Wars as, like, behind the scenes things. Joe Johnston, very interesting, and somehow makes some of my favorite movies, even though I've only seen a couple of them.
Yeah, he directed some great stuff, but hasn't directed much.
No, and he, like, one of his most recent things was, like, that Disney Nutcracker movie that did not, like, hit my radar at all as something I would ever watch. But honestly, after finding out he directed it, it made me slightly more interested.
Not to burst your bubble too much, but according to Wikipedia, he just directed the reshoots.
Oh, no.
So I think they brought him in as, like, a competent person to fix a big mess, probably.
Oh, that's a bummer.
So maybe he made it okay. He did make Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and Jumanji, which are both, like, two of the height of early, like, 90s children's movies.
Yeah.
Those are great movies.
And I think like, watching Captain America and The Rocketeer back to back again, I was like, oh, it makes complete sense that this man was chosen for this job because they're almost the same movie. Like, they take place around the same era. In The Rocketeer, you have Howard Hughes as a main character, and then in Captain America, you have Howard Stark, who is essentially just Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes, yeah.
And, like, very similar characters. There's even the whole thing where, like, this guy flies a plane and he has the picture of his lady friend in the cockpit of the plane. And she has the bright red lips and the black curly hair. And it's, like,
interesting.
very linked movies. Like, I feel like it was like, who are we going to get to direct Captain America? Well, it's pretty much The Rocketeer. How about we get that guy?
Yeah.
And so they feel like very, like, they're a good, like, double feature to watch together.
And I love the, like, rousing kind of old-timey adventure-y feel of Captain America. I think the first one just has, like, it feels like a comic book from the 40s. Like, it feels like the original Captain America comics. And I really wish that, like, that's one of my favorite Marvel movies. And I really wish that some of the other Marvel movies' direction was a little bit more, like, there's just one notch towards the like outlandish or, like, cartoony in Captain America that really works, especially because, like, there's so much sad stuff that happens in it, like when Bucky dies, or, like, it's just kind of like a tragic story throughout, that it makes those parts feel even more like, oh, big feelings for Captain America being happy and big feelings for him being sad that don't quite carry over into some of the other ones as much.
Yeah, we actually were in our rewatch. We just watched Iron Man 3 last night. And one of the main takeaways we had after watching that was like, oh, this is when they don't handle serious stuff as well. When they don't deal with things. That movie is kind of a mess.
That's
But
interesting that you say that because I feel very differently about that. Iron Man 3 is also one of my favorite Marvel movies.
I like the second half of Iron Man 3 a lot. I think the first half and Guy Pearce are kind of a mess.
I can't even really remember it very well, so you're probably right. But I like when he ends up when he's in that small town with the kid.
Yes.
I like that.
The kid is cute. Ben Kingsley is amazing. And there's some scenes where like they hired Shane Black, who is a comedy writer, to write and direct that movie. And the comedy scenes are top tier. They're great. But the dramatic stuff did not work as well for me in that movie. And like the message and the overall thing of the movie just doesn't click that well. So yeah, especially coming off of this like nostalgia romp, I was like, let's watch Iron Man 3. And it was like, oh, this is let me down a little bit. But I think Marvel just didn't know what to do after they made the Avengers. They were like, okay, how do we go from this big team movie where they're all fighting aliens, and how do we make a simple story out of that?
Yeah.
And they struggled a little bit because the next one is Thor: The Dark World.
Yes. I kind of disagree with the Shane Black part of it because he is like a classic 80s, like he wrote Lethal Weapon, he wrote The Monster Squad. He's written a lot of these like buddy team up comedy action movies. And I think that he has a similar style in that kind of like homage-y kind of thing carried over into Iron Man 3, which gives it a point of view that I think something like Thor: The Dark World is lacking completely, where it's like the people making Thor: The Dark World don't know what the point of them making Thor: The Dark World is, or like what they're like visually trying to say with it, or like what they're trying to say to it in any respect. But I think Iron Man 3 at least has that. Shane Black makes this kind of movie, so we'll just have him make this kind of movie. That is enough of a thing to like something to build something around that it feels more like you can sink your teeth into it to me.
Yeah, and I think for me the parts that feel messy in that are the parts that feel like the least Shane Black. And I feel like
the superhero parts of it.
The parts where it feels like maybe Marvel is telling him to do certain things because they need him to do certain things as part of the story. I think if Shane Black got to do a superhero movie in the way Taika Waititi got to do one where it was just like, yeah, do whatever you want, dude. It'll be fun. I think it would be a little bit more like streamlined and regarded as one of the better ones. But I think there are high points in Iron Man 3, but overall, not one of the better. I think one of my favorite Marvel movies.
So I don't want to make this. This part is always one of the longer parts of this show. That's the one where he's saving the people as they're skydiving, right?
Yes, and that scene, very cool.
That's cool. I love that because that was when we walked out of the theater. To me, I remembered that being like one of the first times they really go in depth showing superheroes saving people in those movies.
Oh yeah, so many times it's like, oh yeah, everyone's safe. Deal with the big bad guy.
Yeah. We evacuated the city. All these buildings being smashed. It's fine.
Don't worry about it.
But that one, he just goes out of his way so much to save every individual person. And that to me was like that. Yeah. Tony Stark's, the Iron Man movie specifically, like his whole arc. I think that movie really brings it home well because that part specifically shows him being so not selfish. Anyway, I remembered a couple things. One is Critters. Have you ever seen the movie Critters?
I have not, but it's like a Gremlins, not ripoff, but it's like around the same time as Gremlins, and people equate
like
those two.
Parallel thinking Gremlins.
Right, it's like Dante's Peak and Volcano. Yeah.
It's very different than Gremlins in a lot of ways. It's like a sci-fi story almost. Anyway, it's a movie about this like cute little family who lives in the country, and then it's like Lilo and Stitch kind of, these intergalactic criminals. That's what the critters are. They break out of jail and they land on Earth and they terrorize this family. But then the part I didn't know happened was that there's these two intergalactic bounty hunters who are like shape-shifting bounty hunters who are like hunting the critters down through the whole movie. And that part is kind of like they're like walking through this town, like blowing it up, trying to find the critters. And that part's fun. It was good. I really liked it. And it has lots of puppets in it. So if you like puppets and Muppets and shit, watch Critters. But I think you would like it because it's fun. It's just like a fun 80s, like it's a family movie basically. Nothing really all that horrible happens in it. My perception of it was that it was a very scary horror movie, but that was not what it was at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know that everything you just told me is as much as I know about Critters.
Yeah.
I just knew it existed.
I just remember seeing it walking through like Blockbuster and it looking scary and me being like, no, thank you. I don't need to watch violent Gremlins. But Gremlins is much more violent than Critters. So, but also this might take a long time too. Watched Loki. Did you watch Loki?
I did watch Loki. Yeah. First episode.
Did you like it?
I did.
I thought it was great. I thought it was way better than both of the other first episodes of the Marvel shows that have come out so far.
See, I was all in on WandaVision from the go. Like, as soon as it started, I was like, this is amazing. Yes. Like, I honestly, like, if they had kept the entire thing in the TV world, I would have been fine.
I hated that. That was so boring, I thought. 2 episodes of that black and white stuff was so,
no, see, I
so
love the
much.
slow burn of WandaVision, of, like, you having to realize things are weird at the same time Vision and other people are really like realizing things are weird. But
yeah, but you already know things are weird. You're watching a show about a weird lady who's a superhero.
Yeah, but I don't need everything to like spoon feed it to me and just be like, yeah, we got through the weird stuff. Like
that's what it did. It spoon fed it to you for 2 episodes. I think they could have dispensed with the TV stuff by the 2nd episode.
Oh God, no.
Well, okay.
But I think, yeah, I agree with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I was not a big fan.
No, that one was just kind of boring.
Yeah.
It was fine. There were some episodes that were truly awful, like the one where they go to Madripoor. I was so excited for that because Madripoor in the comics is also a huge deal.
Right.
And it's like when you go to Madripoor in a comic, you're going to see all those supervillains like hanging out and drinking beers and being rowdy. But it was just a bunch of people dressed like they were in the Matrix or something.
Yeah, it just felt like
so
any
stupid.
other big city.
Yeah, I hated that. But this one felt like a movie. It felt like kind of like a Thor movie a little bit, like
the other ones almost feel like they could happen and the movies could never address them. Or
I think that will be what happens.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see like where like the Multiverse of Madness kind of ties in some of that, I'm sure. But it did feel like those other shows could exist and not be acknowledged ever in the movies. Whereas this one feels like obviously it comes straight after the 2012 Avengers / Endgame timeline. And so it very, very clearly ties into a lot of that. But yeah, no, I loved it.
Yeah,
Did you like the old cartoon segment?
I thought that, so WandaVision does some old cartoons that I thought looked very bad because you could just kind of tell that they were computer. And these also were obviously computer-made old cartoons, but they put the right grain on it and they put the drop shadow on it to make it look like it was cells laying over a background. And like the character design was very true to what character design would have looked like back then, where the WandaVision ones were a little bit too modern. Like they just missed it by just a little bit. But this one, like the posters in the background, the cartoon, all of that read to me as very authentic. And I think that helped me a lot as somebody who pays too much attention to that kind of thing. I thought that worked very well.
I did think slight WandaVision thing. The stop motion 90s commercial they did, the clay shark one. I thought that was one that like absolutely nailed the feeling of 90s commercials. But
that was one of the better parts of the show because that was so creepy. And that was something I wished that WandaVision had been just a little bit more creepy. And sometimes it did a great job, and the commercials generally were that way. But I think like when weird stuff would happen in the show, it was just kind of like, oh, that was weird. But I wish that it had just been more like David Lynch, like realities,
like really, really unsettling.
Yeah, unsettling.
Which again, you get glimpses of, but maybe they don't go quite as far as you were hoping. The last 2 things I watched this week, just real quick, I rewatched Last Action Hero, which had a weird tie to the Muppets because I did not realize that Art Carney is in Last Action Hero. It's his very last film role. He plays Arnold Schwarzenegger's character with there's a film within a film thing, and he's in the film within the film playing Arnold's second cousin Frank, who gets exploded real good. But yeah, it was nice to see Art Carney outside of a weird 60s thing.
Guess who wrote Last Action Hero? Shane Black.
Oh. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. There's very few things that Shane Black has done that I do not enjoy, like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, that Ryan Gosling movie he did recently.
Oh, The Nice Guys.
Yeah, The Nice Guys was good.
A lot of them are great, but they'll have one very horrible 80s moment where you're like, I I could go back and edit that out. If I have children, I will cut that part out of the movie before I show it to them.
Yes, there's lots of those things that happen where you're just like, oh man, like
Yeah.
I was showing
almost
somebody this
did
movie
it.
for the first time and forgot this part existed. But the last new thing, a non-Muppet thing I watched this week that I do want to recommend to people that they should check out, it's on Peacock. It's called We Are Lady Parts. And it's a show that I didn't even know was coming, and then I saw it pop up on Peacock and was like, yeah, sure, give this a shot. And I immediately rewatched the pilot like a second time because it was so good and funny. And they do similar things to like Loki and WandaVision, where there's like little fantasy moments where all of a sudden something's taking place in like a Casablanca world, or there's some puppet stuff in that's almost like Muppety. It's a very fun show. It's very good and funny, and it's like only 6 episodes. So highly recommend checking that out as well.
Gotta have Peacock, though.
You do have to have Peacock, which I think is free if
No
you
one knows,
watch commercials
actually, if it's
and
free or not.
not watch certain things.
Yeah.
They have a very weirdly tiered system, which we'll have to deal with pretty soon when we're trying to watch all the SNL Muppet sketches.
Oh, shit. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, we're actually getting close to the era, Sam, where we can legally watch some things. Our entire podcast pretty much so far has been, let's illegally track this down on YouTube.
Yeah, and hope the person who posted it doesn't get mad at us because we had people watching it and they got in trouble.
Yeah,
Or it
I'm
got
really
taken down or
afraid
something.
that there's going to be a time when we like schedule in a whole episode about something, and in between us talking about it and then going to watch it, it gets deleted and we just can't track it down.
That'll be really sad.
But the ones I'm most worried about are the ones that like are uploaded like a week before we talk about them, where I'm like, okay, copyright hasn't caught up with it yet. Let's hurry up and watch this thing. But a lot of these things have been on YouTube for like 10 years and no one has come for it yet because a lot of these are not legally available anywhere.
There's not a lot of money to be made on the Julie Andrews hour otherwise, I don't think.
No. There is, I looked up, we have some appearances on the Cher show. Cher has her own variety show in the 70s, and there's some Muppet appearances on that I was trying to find because they're kind of hard to track down. And so I was like, is there a legal way? Is the Cher show streaming on Paramount Plus or something? It doesn't seem like it is, but there was a like the best of Cher DVD set that you could order in like one of those like Time Life kind of commercial things that is still available, but is $100.
No, we don't need that.
We're not doing that. Sorry. Unless like we don't sell merch, we don't have a Patreon, we have no money as a podcast to spend on Cher DVDs. But next week we will be discussing the 1973 special Julie on Sesame Street, another Julie Andrews special, which, I mean, presumably has a lot more Muppets in it than this one did.
Yeah, I would hope so.
And that's actually all we're discussing next week to wrap up 1973.
All right.
So it might be a lighter episode, but again, the one after that, 1974 episode, is
big
hefty.
boy.
So yeah, we will, of course, tweet out the link to the Julie on Sesame Street show if you'd like to check that out. That's on our Twitter @CommitmentPod. We'd like to thank our friend Tuna for creating the music for this podcast and Cassie Wilson for singing our theme song. You can email us Muppet Memories, or if you happen to track down your mom's old VHSs of the Jimmy Dean Show, send those over to mail@commitment.com. And you can follow me on Twitter @MatthewGatos.
And I'm at Slam Schultz.
And as always, keep believing.
Keep pretending.